Bienvenidos a un programa especial de la Ciudad de las Ideas. Las ideas mueven al mundo. Estamos conscientes de que si queremos prosperidad en los países, lo que requerimos son buenas ideas, porque hoy se sabe que no es lo que transforma el mundo, el capital físico, de hecho hasta el capital social. Lo que realmente cambia el mundo son las ideas y las ideas que se llevan a la acción. Hoy tenemos la fortuna y el honor de entrevistar a las personas de las mentes más brillantes que conozco, y se llama Bernard-Henri Lévy. Pero no solamente importa aquí lo que él sabe y las propuestas y el pensamiento crítico que conlleva, sino que además de ser uno de los intelectuales más reconocidos en el mundo contemporáneo, sin duda alguna una referencia en Francia y en el mundo occidental, y por qué no decirlo en el oriental, también es una persona que lleva las ideas a la acción. Es un doer. No se queda simplemente en las ideas, sino que es una persona que además de ser periodista, escritor, novelista, productor de cine, es una persona comprometida con la justicia. Es una persona comprometida en un hilo conductor con lo que es realmente lo correcto. Y hoy vamos a tener una entrevista dividida en tres partes. La primera para hablar del mundo, de estos grandes temas que le ocupan, como son el populismo, como son los vacíos de poder que está dejando la democracia y que los ocupan algunas dictaduras, 5 países que ponen en riesgo la estabilidad mundial. Posteriormente hablaremos de un tema que él lleva dentro, que tiene que ver con los derechos humanos, con el antisemitismo, con lo que eso significa. Y por último, si nos los permite Bernard-Henri Lévy, vamos a hablar un poco de él, de sus intereses, porque tener una personalidad como él y tenerlo en sus casas es realmente un honor. Bernard-Henri, it's really a great honor to be with you. And of course, I know you speak many languages. We will try to do this in English, but whenever you want to talk in French or in Spanish, welcome. The first question I have for you, it's related with Mexico. It's not only about Mexico, but it talks our core. And it's happening in many places of the world. And it has to do with populism, which is it's a word that many people have different understanding and meaning about it. But some people are concerned. Some people think it's a good thing to happen. I have heard that you have talked about, well, many people understand populism as the power of the people. But that's the surface, what's beneath. We are very interested to know your opinion about it.
No, populism is not the power of the people. Populism is the dictatorship of the people. Populism is when the sovereign, which is the people, becomes a dictator, which should never happen. When you have a statesman who becomes a dictator, you put shame on him, you attack him, you contest, you try to topple it, to topple him. When the king is not a man but the people, it's the same process. What if the people has the temptation to become a dictator, to oppress the minorities, to make some choices who bring to the worse, to endorse fascism, for example, it is also an abuse of power. It is also the power turning into dictatorship, and this has to be prevented. So populism is the dictatorship of the people, and this dictatorship has to be fought and combated as any dictatorship. Why should I combat Pinochet or Maduro, and why should we not combat a dictator which is a collective dictator and which claims to be the people? It is the same process.
Amazing. Thomas Mann, as you know, he had a radio program related to this that says, listen Germans. And actually he was concerned from the United States, sending a radio television to German in German, telling them, Hitler is not the problem. Are you the followers the problem? You have to wake up. How can we, given the fact that the people are the dictators, what institutional arrangements, what rules of the game we have to put to stop that the big majority of the people go against the minorities and become dictators?
The problem is that the first act of superpower exerted by populism is to destroy these institutions. to destroy press, to destroy the rule of the law, to despise human rights and so on. So it's very difficult. This is not, alas, the institutions sometimes are not the solution because they are the problem. They are destroyed. Look at what is happening in Italy, for example, or look what is happening in some countries of Central Europe. The populism destroys methodically all the rules of the state of law. Democracy is not only, of course, it is the fact to vote and to choose your representative, but it is not only that. It is also an ethos. It is also a system of institutions. It is a whole of check and balances. All this is democracy, and all this is destroyed by populism. So, what should be the target? To keep these institutions as much as possible alive, to defend them, to say that they against the apparent anarchism of the populist who says fire on the institution, fire on the law, fire, to defend the law, to defend the state of law, to defend the big institutions which, as Emmanuel Levinas said, prevent us from devouring, eating, swallowing each other's institutions. You have also bad institutions, of course, but institutions in democracy is something which has to be revered, respected, and saved. This is the problem.
That makes me think on two issues. One is, based on what you're telling me, you could be much more concerned with Brazil than with the United States. Because even in the populism of the United States with Donald Trump, probably you have institutions that are much more strong than, for example, in Brazil. So at the end, what we really need is to put much more strength to our rule of law. That's one idea. And the second one that provokes me a lot, it's pretty easy for the people to see when somebody with like Fidel Castro takes power and becomes a dictator, or Pinochet or whatever. But when it's the people, the monocracy as we call it, that it's the demo, when it's the people that by civil rights and by vote, they choose to have these kind of dictatorships. And then like in Maduro, they become dictators. And they take out from their own country the people that criticize the press, that think critically. They stay there in power forever. I understand how to prevent it. You already explained it. But once you have it, wow, it's really difficult to change this.
It is difficult, but this is the moment where the rest of the democracies have to show solidarity and brotherhood. You speak about Venezuela. Venezuela is a typical situation. You have at the head of the Venezuela a true fascist, who is Maduro. I don't see any difference between Maduro and Pinochet, for example. They are the same way of thinking, same despise of the people, and so on. The rest of the world, the democracies, the international community should be much more tough against Maduro. Maduro should be convicted, for example, in front of international courts for the crimes he committed. These crimes should be examined and should be judged as such. We could implement some sanctions, personal sanctions on him, personal sanctions on all the companies who sold the wealth of the Venezuelan people, the wealth coming from the oil, one of the biggest producers of oil in the world, reduced to mendicity today. So there is some international tribunals, there is some possible sanctions, there is some a way to isolate Maduro, which has not been implemented yet. Look at what happened in Sudan. You had a sort of Maduro in Sudan. His name was al-Bashir. he was indicted by the Tribunal of La Hague. He was, for a few years, he bragged. He said, come and fetch me. I don't care. I could not care less, and so on. At the end of the day, the process went to its end, and he was toppled by its own people. But how can your people topple you if the places where democracy is well anchored don't show the example? So we have to be much more supportive to Guaido. We have to be much more severe with Maduro. And if we did that, really, not this recognition of Guaido with the tips, with the lips. I'm sorry, with the lips. Mm-hmm. It should be much more strong. I think that the Venezuelan people, what is left of the Venezuelan people, because sure. It's would reflect twice before continuing to endorse Maduro.
It's wise, the discovery of thinking the way so different from your perspective than anybody else see it. And when you say, well, actually the dictators is not actually Maduro, but are the people, you already explained me the problem of what is happening and how can we solve it in a way. But the question that I still have is the why. Imagine Maduro is not there, and then it comes another person. And the problem, David Livingstone Smith talks that there is a narrative in many people that has our primitive brain that says we have problems, we find a scapegoat, and comes the Messiah and give a solution. And when the people are hungry of resentment, of injustice, of whatever, it will go Maduro from there, but it will come another one. And my question goes because I am a big admirer of your work, and once you said something that very people said that I have heard. It's not education that we need. You mentioned Voltaire, even Noam Chomsky, very well educated people, but terrible in these topics. What is what we need to help that these dictators are not, I'm talking about the people, are not open to become dictators again with another person? Is critical thinking, it's what?
First of all, you have a great book in French political philosophy, a book by Étienne de la Boétie, which is called Treaty about, I don't know how to say it in English, about voluntary slavery. Mm-hmm. There is in mankind the idea, there is a great will for freedom, but there is also the opposite will. There is the idea that freedom is heavy, that freedom obliges you to take responsibility, and that sometimes it's a relief to leave a man or a group to take decisions for you. This exists in the history of mankind. This was the theory of Étienne de la Boétie in his Treaty of Voluntary Slavery. You had, during the time of the Soviet Union, another man called Alexander Zinoviev who said the same. Who said, of course, the big guilty are the apparatchik of Soviet Union, but they are accepted more or less by the people. People find, feel okay with that. And it was not completely false, because when the people of the Eastern Europe and of Russia decided, with their own feet, they decided to break the wall, they decided to topple the regime, and they obliged Gorbachev to destroy the Soviet Union. So you have this dimension of voluntary slavery that exists. Now, first of all, you have a moment where even voluntary, the slavery becomes unacceptable. And when the possible advantage you take from it cannot be compared with the huge quantity of unhappiness, of suffering you endure. Venezuela is at this point. Mm-hmm. Venezuela, the suffering of the people of Venezuela leaves me speechless. The people is, con razón, fed up with this slavery. It's impossible now to have a normal life in this country. So I think that the people of Venezuela is ready for the change, is ready to withdraw the part of consent which was given, alas, to Chavez and maybe in the beginning of Maduro. But we have to help. We cannot leave them alone. We cannot leave the people of Venezuela alone in front of the snipers of the Maduro army. We have to help. It is not a process which can be left to people alone. This is one thing. And the other thing is that you are right. Knowledge is not enough. History is full of people of great knowledge who acted and behaved like bastards. Like you have in Latin America, Garcia Marquez. Garcia Marquez was a huge writer, one of the best in the world. But we know how perverse he could be in his relationship, for example, with Fidel Castro. There is even rumors which some Colombian say, I don't know if it is true, that he even liked to be part of some sceneries of the worst executions.
Wow.
Garcia Marquez, Noam Chomsky is another one. Noam Chomsky is one of the greatest scientists of today in linguistics. And
linguistics, I know.
And he's supporting, he supported the authors of the genocide in Cambodia. He's supporting the dictators all over the world. He's attacking democracies in all the places where they resist. He really uses his intelligence and his talent in the most wicked and dirty and insane and perverse way. So, intelligence is not enough. What is required? Character, courage, and politics at the end of the day is the question of passions. You have some, like Chomsky, who have the passion of slavery. He likes that. He likes slavery. He likes, probably, I don't know him, but I read him. He likes from Pol Pot to Maduro to passing through Arab dictators. He likes this man. He has, I don't know, at least a great indulgence for them. You have others who have the passion of freedom. Me, I have the passion of freedom. It is passion against passion. As for myself, in 2011, when I saw the so-called Arab Spring, I did not know if it will go to a good end. I did not know if, in the case we open the door, if they will cross the door. I did not know. I did not know if they will be able to use the key of liberty, which some people were ready to extend to them with a brotherly hand. But for me, there was no question. The key has to be given. We had to make a try. We could not say to these people, you are forbidden of democracy. Democracy is not for you. For me, it was so. You have two sort of guys. You have some guys whose first reflex is to support the tyrann, is to support the dictator, and those whose first reflex is to support the people seeking for freedom. It's not a question. I'm not more clever than Chomsky. I'm maybe not such a great scientist as he is, but I have the passion of liberty, and he has the passion of slavery or of dictatorship. At the end of the day, this is the question. Maybe also it's a question of intellectual courage. I think that it is worth trying to help people to join the tide of democracy. Maybe some others are shivering with fear. Maybe they believe that democracy, freedom, human rights is an adventure which make them frightened. I don't know. These are the real questions. Question of character, question of reflexes, question of passion, and then knowledge and science comes after. Alas, I would love knowledge matching automatically with freedom and free thinking. It is not the case. And all the history of the 20th century is full of great, before Garcia Marquez or others, of great writers, great philosophers embracing fascism, embracing communism without any distance. This is the point. So it means that knowledge has nothing to do with the choice of liberty.
Qué impresionante reflexión. Because what I like about your thinking, it's actually this courage. Because I mean, most of the people will say as a cliche, education is the solution for everything, and knowledge is. And as you mentioned it, in 1941, the final solution, 2/3 of the people that were there had PhDs. And people like Martin Heidegger and many other people that you know that are very smart and very brilliant, but they don't have the courage of have this critical thinking that you have. And it has to do not only with I was born with the passion of freedom and I was the no. There are some interest of power and comfortable zone of these intellectuals that instead of helping and waking up, because it has to have a lot of courage what you're doing, because you lose a lot of comfortable, you have been criticized a lot, you're provocative, but you bring this intelligence, multiple intelligence of thinking differently, but el emperador está desnudo, be careful. The emperor is. In this sense, I'm concerned, I'm not very optimistic after you said, well, international institutions should punish Maduro. Today, as you have seen, the UN have invited him to be part of the National Commission of Human Rights, and I'm really concerned about those things. Coming now to talk about United States and the world, the geopolitical arena. Your last book that talks about, well, what's happening when a big giant like United States starts to give the power or creating the vacuum of power, and what happens to other 5 imperialistic countries. Could you elaborate, where are we going?
This is the topic of my last book, The Empire and the 5 Kings. It is exactly what you say. Nature hates vacuum, and political nature too hates vacuum. So when America creates a vacuum, Turkey, Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the radical Islam in general, and China occupy the vacuum. This is exactly the part where we are. The emptiness created by the retreat of America is filled by new imperialism. And I call Russia of Putin an imperialism. I call, with reason, China real imperialism. Iran asked my friends my Kurdish friends in Syria, in Iraq, and ask my friends in Lebanon what they think. They face a real imperialism, which we are letting expand, which we are authorizing to expand, which is the imperialism of Iran. So you can think whatever you want about America, and I'm not a devote of America. America has committed terrible mistakes and crimes, but at least America was also there was this creed in democracy, in human rights. Very often they were unfaithful to their own creed, but the creed was there. The creed of Erdogan, the creed of Iran, the creed of Putin is hate to democracy, finishing with human rights, extending an empire of nihilism and of crime. And this is what we are letting be done. And Maduro, in the Human Rights Commission of the UN, considering this context, is terrible, but is not completely surprising.
Wow. Could you elaborate a little bit on that last word? Why is it not completely surprising?
Because he is the champion today of some of the rogue states which I denounce in my book. He is the champion.
Scary, very scary. Okay, when there is vacuum, there are powers that will try to occupy it because that's the nature. What's going on with Europe? The silence. Why they are not taking this opportunity to, okay, be the guardians of the, I don't know how to call it, the core values of the, I don't want to say about the Western society, but these universal values.
Because Europe is also under attack from inside by populist movements. You have representative of the ideology of Trump, of Putin, of Erdogan, and so on inside Europe. So very difficult to act considering that. The populist parties in Italy, in France, in Germany, who are growing, are preventing Europe to behave properly.
If the UN is dominated by these terrible forces in a way, the international institutions, if the European countries within inside are also contaminated about this virus, I mean, I don't want to make this interview a Prozac moment of depressing, but I know you are not, I have listened to your words, you have said there are people that talk, everything will be perfect, everything is better than before, like Steven Pinker, like Peter Diamandis, like many other people. There are other people that say this is very pessimistic, everything is going terrible. And as you mentioned one day, there are other circulars. What's now your perspective? What will happen? What do we have to do to change this?
We have to fight. Women and men of goodwill have to unite their forces, and they have to fight as much as they can. This is what I try to do in Europe, in America, on the battlefield in Iraqi Kurdistan. I try to fight. I do my best. We just have to do our best, considering that it is true for truth. It is true that the democratic forces are now in bad position. They are under attack everywhere. But you know, I don't believe in the sense of history.
Okay.
I don't believe that history has a providential or anti-providential move like a fatality. I don't believe that. I believe that the peoples, that sometimes single men can break the fatality, can reverse the process of history. I deeply believe that. I have so many examples in my life and in my memory. So game is not over. Good. Far from it.
Talking about Trump and now the Middle East. For many people at the beginning, Donald Trump was very pro-Israel and everybody was very hopeful. I'm talking about the democracy of the Middle East, is Israel. It's an example country of doing the things good in many ways, in others not so much. But at the end, it has been like a lot of signals of contradictions. Many things go this way, but others go this way. What's your opinion of Donald Trump in this sense?
My dear friend, considering what Trump did with the Kurds in Iraq 2 years ago after the referendum of autodetermination, the Kurds in Syria a few weeks ago when he decided to abandon them and to drop them flat. Trump has no ally. Trump is not pro this or that.
He doesn't have passion.
He has no ally. He has no word. He has no consistency. He makes deals, apparently, but I'm not even sure that it is good deals. Generally, it is bad deals. And I believe that any so-called ally of America should be very concerned today. Each of them. It can be in the Arab world, or it can be Israel. Moreover, I never believed that Trump was what is a friend of Israel? A friend of Israel is someone who does some acts of friendship, of course, but is also someone who has this friendship really and genuinely rooted in himself. Acts of friendship who are not based and rooted on a real sense of friendship, they can be meaningless. You have to take them, of course, And Israel, in particular, has not so many friends and has so many enemies that when an act of friendship comes, it's good to take it. But to be naive enough to believe that Trump is a friend with the heart is a big mistake. And to make compromise with the ideology of Trump, to make compromise with this glittering and obscene way of taste, Trump towers, vulgarity and so on, this is so opposite to the spirit of Judaism. It is so opposite to the values that permitted the Jews to survive throughout centuries, that to make compromise with that, moral compromise, deep compromise, intellectual compromise, might be a mortal mistake. So my recommendation, I am a Jew, I'm a friend of Israel. What I wish is that the Jews outside and inside Israel remains really eyes wide open and certainly not compromising with this way of thinking and way of behaving which is the contrary of the values who made their resistance and their survival across centuries. This is crucial.
Each of your words count, really. Thank you very much.
Thank
Just
you.
one more question related to it. There are very few thinkers in the world and such good thinkers like you. I mean, I don't know what you think about even Alan Finkielkraut, of course, of the imaginary Jew, and even Jean-Paul Sartre that talk also about la cuestión judía. But there are very few people that have tried to understand and think and talk and elaborate about anti-Semitism, which is really a very profound and complex feeling. Once I heard that you talk, it's like a virus. What's going on now with this virus? And how can we, I don't know if we could be in one way or in another to exterminate it. I don't know if that's possible.
Number one, this virus, as all virus, mute. This is virus, you know. Virus, you can have a vaccination and next year it mutes in another form. Same for anti-Semitism. It mutes all over history, and today the last mutation of the virus is anti-Zionism plus denial of Holocaust plus this crazy, stupid and bad idea of competition of victims. The three together, competition of victims, meaning we are fed up with remembering the misery and the martyrdom of Jews, that there is other victims who should be dealt with. This plus denial of Holocaust, soft or strong denial, plus anti-Zionism, make together are the three devices of this atomic, this moral nuclear bomb, which is the new anti-Semitism, number one. Can it be eradicated? I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't think so. It cannot be. It will not be eradicated because again, there is too many vested passions that feed anti-Semitism that it will not be eradicated like I don't know, a bad herb, a bad plant. And by the way, I say a virus, not a microbe. A microbe may be eradicated. A virus not. A virus is never eradicated. He remains in the body, in the human body, and in the social body also, asleep and sometimes awakening. So it will not be. What can be done is to confront, is to contain, is to resist, and is to oppose to this anti-Semitism a wall of wisdom, a wall of refusal, a wall of lucidity, and a wall of pride and moral force. I believe that the best way to oppose anti-Semitism, in the past people believed that the best way to oppose anti-Semitism was to go undercover, to make that the Jews should be a little forgotten, maybe hiding themselves. I think the opposite. The best way to oppose anti-Semitism is to confront it, is to make more acute and more actualized the moral weapons, the moral force of resistance that the history of Judaism transmitted to the living Jews of today. This is the way to do. We will not eradicate it, but we will contain it. And that's the best we can do.
I love your courage, and believe me, still the policy of hiding, it's still very alive in many countries of Latin America. To listen from you the words of confronting and of have courage is again, I think, as you have always the line of justice and fight for what is correct, and that's aligned in all the things that you do. But I think it's also chutzpah in terms of take the risk and the courage. Absolutely, yes.
I can be against government in Mexico,
Turkey and
in France. I have been opposed sometimes strongly to government.
Do you think that sometimes when they say they're against Netanyahu,
the real problem with Israel is that when you are against the government of Venezuela, you don't preach for the disparition of Venezuela.
And you don't do a boycott against...
You don't make a boycott against the artists of Venezuela traveling abroad. You don't make a boycott against what remains of Venezuelan universities and centers of research. When you are against the government of Israel, you punish all the scientists, all the artists, all the singers, whatever they think themselves. You don't even ask what they think of their own government. This is my thinking.
I don't know if you want to add something. Señoras y señores, es un verdadero placer escuchar una mente provocadora donde cada palabra cuenta. Hoy nos hizo descubrir que muchas cosas que creemos no las deberíamos de creer. Cuidado. Siempre hablamos del dictador, la persona. Con Bernard-Henri nos damos cuenta de una nueva manera de entender el mundo, un nuevo paradigma. ¿Qué tal si el dictador es el pueblo? ¿Qué tal si el dictador no es el líder y el líder es un follower de un pueblo? ¿Qué instituciones formales e informales requerimos para defender a las minorías cuando hay un dictador pueblo y cómo cambiarlo? Con esta gran plática también descubrimos una manera totalmente distinta de entender el mundo, donde si el poder de una gran potencia como Estados Unidos se libera, el vacío se rellenará, y se rellenará sobre todo de quien sepa aprovecharlo. Y su geopolítica de 5 países que están tomando esta oportunidad de hacer las cosas distintas es también un abrir los ojos para todos nosotros. Otro punto clave. No confíes en aquellas personas, como en este caso el líder Trump, donde no hay necesariamente un compromiso y no puede tener aliados. Cuidado con ser naif. Y por último, que yo me quedo con esto que me parece de lo más importante de un intelectual tan brillante como Bernard-Henri Lévy, es ojo con este otro mito. Conocimiento no equivale realmente a una inteligencia crítica. Hay gente con muchos doctorados, con enormes conocimientos, pero que a pesar de ello fortalecen a tiranos y son tiranos. Ojalá ustedes como yo se lleven más preguntas que respuestas, pero sin duda alguna estoy seguro que hoy fue una entrevista donde nuestro entrevistado nos hará cambiar de opinión y cuestionarnos siempre. It was a great honor to have this interview with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.